Hi there, this is Crystal Blue, and I'm back to do the second card or second pile for my first It's Elemental reading. So, I opened up the window just a little bit because it's been such a nice day today and I wanted to get some fresh air. And I thought, I'll go ahead and open it, but the roosters are probably going to start getting loud. And no sooner did I do the test, and now, it was quiet. And then just as soon as I turned this camera on, the roosters are all going off. There's several of them in the hood. Okay, so obviously, we're talking about animals coming through in this particular reading very strongly. And the roosters are sounding off to let you know that they're part of the animal kingdom that is being uh, harmed, essentially, okay, by really bad vibes, by negative energy. And it is really interesting that they're going off right now because it's been quiet for several hours. So all of a sudden, it's as if they knew that I was going to start filming. And right when, like I said, right when I pushed the start button, the first one started doing his business. So, just like our puppy the other night, trying to get my attention, and it turned out to be spot on because the message that was coming through was very strong for pile number one, and that ended up correlating to a song that I heard when I stepped out to let him outside, and because I had the stereo on in the front room. And that song was What's Going On by Marvin Gaye, but it was being sung by Samuel Seal, or Seal, who's a fantastic performer, musician. So perhaps roosters are significant. I know when I did my first 3 readings for under Crystal Blue, I was pretty nervous about it, actually, because as a scientist, I was like, I don't really know if this is the avenue that I need to go to communicate. But that is exactly what Spirit was having me do. And where I was located back home. And because for those who don't know me, I'm an environmental scientist who's been a target of directed energy weapons, and essentially had to flee for my safety in California. So I used my intuitive guidance system to deal with the fear, and these are the ways that Spirit eventually guided me to deal with the emotions behind all of that, because it is pretty damaging, and the dark side knows that the use of these types of weapons, neurological weapons, are extremely damaging to the human psyche and spirit, okay? And it's spiritual warfare, essentially. So it's no different for animals that are fleeing their lives by fires that are being set on purpose. It's as if controlled fires and the ways in which we used to manage things with care in mind and reasonableness have been reverse engineered, if you will, to do the very opposite, to achieve the extreme most damage possible. Okay, so that's what I'm getting at. And that is why my profession, science, became so dangerous for me to stay in, and I had to leave. Basically, under similar conditions, but more quiet. So there's a document called Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, and that's how I was being warred against as a scientist. And many scientists did not make it through. If you look at, I don't want to startle people, but knowledge is power, okay? And if you look at the dead scientist list or lists, there's more than one, and you'll see how science has been undermined and continues to be undermined through these uncontrolled emotions that people are exhibiting in our environment at the expense of life and the well-being of our environment that may not recover if things are not snuffed out, essentially. Like, water puts out fire, right? But if those people who intend to burn down the place have control of the water, then what do you think will happen or continue to happen? And so I was in the water industry out in California, so I think you can start to see where I'm coming from and why Spirit was trying to get my attention long ago, even before 9/11. So, and we know on 9/11 that many people lost their lives by falling out of burning buildings, right? Or burned and incinerated on the spot, like these kangaroos and koala bears and other marsupials and mammals. Mammals have evolved beyond the dinosaurs for a reason, but it's becoming more and more apparent to me, and the research that I've done over the years, even before this type of energy came at me, and by the way, also was controlling my electronics and electricity in my house that was eventually heisted in really wicked ways. So, our utilities are being manipulated and controlled to the extreme, just as our weather is being manipulated, so that a few have a lot of control over billions of people on the planet, because they believe that it's their world and they're entitled to do whatever the hell they want to do with it, okay? But Satan's time on an influence on this planet is nearing an end, okay? And with that comes the second coming of Christ. So you don't have to be a Christian to get it. You just have to have eyes wide open and care about humanity and our planet and how it's being torched and chemically altered in the atmosphere and in our waterways, because you're breathing the air and you're drinking the water just like I am, regardless of my spiritual or religious belief. Okay, so I'm talking about Earth Spirit. I'm talking about Gaia. Okay, and I'm talking about all the components that make up Gaia, if you will. But Earth is not a machine to be run into the ground. Earth has its own, or her own, energy center, if you will, and her energy grids. And they are being taxed, just as our bodies are, which are also predominantly made of water. So I'm going to read this card. This is called Bushfires. It's the first card out of the gate, so to speak, from the Elemental Oracle, which is by Stacy DeMarco. And this is for the second pile. This is the second card. Okay, here we go. Number 10 is the card. Bushfires, fury, extreme emotions, once engaged, are hard to put back in the container. Anger, excuse me, let me rest my arm. Anger is a healthy emotion, yet fury is less necessary. Warlike emotions should be tempered unless survival requires it. In this case, it's the opposite, okay? Yeah, the survival of indigenous people matters just as much as white people, okay? And same for our animals. So their survival requires that this type of fury be tempered. And that's what I've been working on as a scientist since I had to basically beat feet out of California in 2015. Emotional intelligence is what is required at this time. And I'm here to tell you that's exactly spot on. And that is why Spirit has me communicating quite a bit about emotional intelligence and gaining a new sense of what it means to be human and humane on our planet. It's not about intellectual prowess, because a lot of these highly intellectual lawyers, doctors, chiefs, etc. are whacked out, basically, and that's what I learned firsthand dealing with them. So, and it's all connected to what's happening globally. So the word of power involved here is mania, fury or rage, and you just add a C to the end of that, and it's maniac, and that's pretty much it. Egomaniacs. Bushfires are a regular occurrence within some ecosystems in places such as Australia. Bushfires are often started naturally by lightning strikes and unnaturally by arson or uncontrolled backburning. And that's what I'm getting at here. Because since 9/11, the profit by peril model of doing business, quote unquote, has prevailed and has enticed many people in this line of work, so to speak, to actually be part of the problem instead of part of the solution. And SOULUTION. Bushfires have a high heat output and are greatly affected by wind, fuel load, ambient temperature, humidity, and slope. The First Nations people in Australia used fire to successfully control and manage the fertility and the appearance of the environment for much of the 60,000 years prior to European settlement, which is predominantly the white man, right? Particular care was taken over time to create a patchwork series of burns, allowing animals to escape and to have food sources, as well as creating cold burns that did not reach the crown of the trees. While fires have always been part of some ecosystems, in fact integral to them because of things such as fire-triggered germination, which most of us know about if we know anything about forest fires and regeneration of trees. This is different. We are now entering a time when fires burn so hot and so furious due to climate change factors that the destruction is instead catastrophic. I do want to mention right here, right now, the book Disaster Capitalism by Naomi Klein. Get a copy. These fires are furious, destroying everything. What does it say? Oh yeah, destroying everything. Okay. Sadly, uncontrolled bushfires are becoming the norm in this time of quote-unquote climate change in many countries, and I'll preface that with hashtag anthropogenic. They are man-made, and they are intentional. These fires are furious, destroying everything: habitat, native wildlife, human life, and property. Some areas have been so intensively burnt, there is a chance they will not recover nor easily regenerate. The last decade has seen huge forest and bushfires burn with a before seen intensity that has destroyed huge areas of biome. And the biome card is toward the bottom of this deck, the Elemental Oracle, and I'll show it to you. The bushfires of the Australian summer of 2019 to 2020 burnt over 12 million hectares and killed around a billion animals, with half of all Australians affected on that continent. These intense bushfires have a huge economic cost, not to mention an emotional and spiritual one. And so that she's Stacey DeMarco's from Australia, and she's talking about her homeland here. So she knows pretty well. And I'm talking on many of my tweets about my neck of the woods, which is the western United States, which is also suffering in the same manner by the same bad actors, okay? And the U.S. military knows what I'm talking about, whether they want to acknowledge it or not. These intense bushfires have a huge economic cost, but some are profiting from this peril, including on the inside of our government and the military that's supposed to protect our homeland. Fury is a difficult emotion both to feel and to have directed at you, which is what I dealt with. And the reason I dealt with it early on is because why? I was in the water industry, and I'd been working in that industry since 1999, and prior to that, I worked at NASA from 1991 to 1998. So my resume bothered some of these people in hindsight 2020. But it was at the 2009 point that I was picking up on this very problem of geoengineering, even before they were able to start doing these types of things on mass scale. So that's why I was targeted. And she's writing here, bushfires of the Australian summer of 2019 burnt over 12 million hectares and killed a billion animals. That's fully 10 years after I was picking up on this and also asking questions of the agency where I worked, the Department of Water Resources in Northern California. And I was also reporting my concern to the Attorney General, who is now the Vice President of the United States. So fury is a difficult emotion both to feel and to have directed at you. So let me see, by 2011, I was hit with different types of directed energy to ensure that I could no longer communicate, essentially. Fury feels extremely extreme and uncontrollable. And yes, it is. When you're on the receiving end of it, it's like an energy you cannot even imagine exists or that it would come from a human. But it is, in fact, war. So it is important to explore and to work through such emotions, being on the receiving end even, because I could have turned into a violent person, becoming very angry at what was directed at me. But I chose to distance myself from these types of people and to try to remedy the situation best of my ability, not knowing that how deep and steeped it was in past history. Unpicking why we feel such intensity and how this manifests in the environment does help to balance the fury and to become more balanced. So they were trying to imbalance me and my career and my family, and that's why I relate to the animals so much, because I know what they're going through, and my animals were also forced into imbalance in really cruel ways that were silent. This is more obvious, but the devil uses many tools And that is why it's important for those of us who know what we know to use our voices. So the first card in this series for this first reading is the equator, to make things equal and to get some balance. And the second card, and that one was involving the element of fire. I meant to say that, but so is this one. This is obviously about the element of fire. So we have two cards in this first It's Elemental reading about fire, the element of fire, and the water planet, on our water planet, which is predominantly, we shouldn't be having all these problems, but the people that are steering this dark ship, or this Titanic issue, if you will, this Titanic problem, are the same people behind 9/11. And, we shouldn't be dealing with this because there's plenty of water on our planet. But for these people that want to gain control of all the elements that we need in a balanced manner to coexist on our planet, this is the bottom of the deck card, Oceans, Bravery. And so it takes brave people to step up and stay balanced amid this forced imbalance on our planet, which is called climate change. Our planet naturally knows how to balance herself, okay? But for these ticks and pests, if you will, that think the rest of us on the planet are the pests that need to be exterminated. That's what Hitler thought. Okay, and it's the Hitler legacy that I'm speaking about because it's tied back to war. And this goes all the way back to World War II and World War I. That's when the Titanic sunk. We know who was on the Titanic at the time. And we know that person and others were connected to wealthy people who were trying to make a difference in this world, including those involving electricity, such as Tesla and one of his funders, okay? So they are destroying everything, and they've been at it a long-ass time, manipulating people, conditions, the conditioning of society, etc., to get their way. And just look at this person's eyes, or her eye. She's like, what is this? This is not normal. It is maniacal. And I'm here to tell you that what I thought I was fighting in courtrooms turned out to be this type of energy behind the scenes. So I'm going to put these both here because we have fire and water. Two elements on our planet. We have fire, we have water. You can see this is controlled, it's pleasant, it's a cute little, water fountain that brings calm and peace. But if you have raging waters because you have this emotional malcontent in billions of people on the planet, what do you think is going to happen on our planet? Watching the movie that I recommend constantly called What the Bleep Do We Know? The extended version is extremely important to watch at a minimum to get a deeper understanding, because this is just like a general type of extended reading, a general extended, but Spirit has me talking about many facets of water and fire through oracle and tarot cards. And mind you, I never planned to do this. It kind of came about when I happened to go to the SPCA thrift store in Reno, Nevada, back in 2018, 17 or 18, I think it was, when we were still stuck living in an old RV because my $500,000 house was stolen out from underneath me by these reckless profiteers controlling drought in California and in the world, and all their minions that they pay to basically terrorize to get their way. But I went into this SPCA thrift store. Some told me just to go in there, and I didn't really have that much money on me. And, you know, I've never recovered any of the equity for my house yet or anything. So they are thieves, and they come in the night and they come in the daytime, and they're at it all the time. Evil never sleeps. But I met a woman in there who was actually telling me, you know, she was showing me where she had gotten hit by her boyfriend. She was African American. She was showing me that she got hit by her boyfriend in the face or in the eye, and she was concerned for her safety. And we had this really nice, peaceful talk about what it feels like to be, you know, have experienced domestic violence, because I'm a domestic violence survivor more than once. But what I'm getting at is this domestic violence has piggybacked onto other types of violence, and it's all coming into this fury, this maniacal fury, because these types of people are not being constrained or controlled in our legal system anymore, especially, excuse me, in the United States of America. Now, these are the types of things that I was dealing with in the courtroom setting, in family law in particular, back around 9/11. And I never thought that I would have to go through those things, but I ended up becoming more empowered through it, and then I went to law school, and that's where I was merging my interest with environmental science and environmental protection of the environment and animals, right? So you can see why I was being blocked by 2009 in particular, but also before that through mortgage scamming of my house, and other bad actors that were kind of coming, you know, collecting in the region and in my neck of the woods in Davis, California. So it's all connected to imbalance our ecosystems and our communities. So if we can kind of put ourselves in the shoes or in the feet or the paws of others and animals, if you will, then this helps you to see and make the important connections that I'm making, and you'll begin to understand why I'm doing so and why I keep bringing the animals up into this, because animals are not different than us. We're mammals, right? You're a mammal, I'm a mammal. Many animals are mammals, right? I mean, some of them are classified differently than mammals, but there are different types of animals on our planet that are more highly evolved, and those are the ones that I'm talking about. That, you know, like this is, I forget the name of, I think they call them joeys, right? So, you know, kangaroos carry their young in their pouches. Much like human mothers carry their babies in their little stomach or their pouch stomachs. They get really big until they can't anymore. And so, you know, and we nurse our children, and many of us help our children into adulthood, because raising an adult human is a lot of work. And you can see where some have failed in raising responsible offspring. But animals take care of themselves. Humans, not so much, okay? So that's why I'm trying to help people understand that Mother Nature is able to control herself, okay, and her offspring, and she does a fine job. She also does a fine job of balancing the climate naturally and the atmosphere and all these things until man starts fucking things up, excuse my expression, but that's exactly what this is. In militaristic terms or military terminology, because I was married to military, or a military person who moved up into high ranks, and the higher that individual got, the more jaded he got, and then the more dangerous he became. So, and that's a fact, regardless of what appearances look like on the outside. I'm talking about what's going on the inside of these people that have fury and rage. And it's largely because they've aligned themselves with something that is bigger than them and even bigger than the militaries, which is Satan, okay? And Satan is steering that ship into the ground. And that's what this fury is like, and that's what it feels like, okay? When it's coming after you, that's what it's like. That's war, okay? It's not a contained fire. It's not a pleasant fire. I can't pick it up because it's hot. But yeah, we know when something's hot to back off. These people don't. These types of people that are under the influence of Satan, plus drugs, plus God knows what else, are going to be our demise. And that's why this next card that I'm going to read in relation to Moonology is so important. But recall, I think you should watch the first card and the first pile as well, because we're talking about the fire element in both. The bottom of the deck card happens to be, luckily, expect powerful change, because the climate change, quote unquote, climate change that these people are steering is essentially hell on earth. That's what they're aligning with, is satanic force. It's not the power of God, it's the force of Satan. So get a copy of Power versus Force and start understanding the difference and the misnomer of power in relation to force, as well as get the book The Alphabet versus the Goddess, because you will see how long periods of time and timelines matter greatly right now as we're eclipsing out all of this fury off of our planet, essentially. And how we're doing it is pretty incredible. But that is the power that I'm talking about. Expect powerful change, not forceful change, which is what man is doing, and Air Force and ground force, ground forces are doing. The United Nations isn't about uniting nations, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and read. So that I just read from the Elemental Oracle. And I'm going to read the Moonology card next, as I said. And then this is going to be the introduction for card number 2. And then I'll get into the rest of the Oracle cards. And then the Tarot cards, plus Language of Flowers Oracle. And the secret sauce here, which is from this deck here. And that will give us some secret guidance in the extended as well. And that will be part of the tarot reading for this card number 2, called Bushfires Fury, number 10. So the card that came out when I shuffled, I didn't just pick it. I shuffled it and I did it on screen. You can go to the introduction for this series and watch that. Is this card. Adjustments are required. So yes, we need severe adjustment from this type of behavior of uncontrolled fury. Okay? And that's what light workers like myself are doing to bring about these adjustments at this time. actually, I've been working on doing this for many years, and I knew that I was going to have to work solo for quite a long time. And I have been online teaching how I've been guided to teach and speak for at least 9 years. Coming up on, let me see, 2012, September, that's when I got online because one of my animal companions was severely harmed by this type of evil fury. And so I got online and I started learning how to tweet about it because I already knew that it was pretty dark and pretty bad. Because you see, I'd already been married to the U.S. military, and I'd been affiliated with that way of life for a long, long time. So it's one that I trusted, but it turns on you, and it's like Christ trusting those who stabbed him in the back. That's essentially what it felt like. So, and even, being cornered in certain parts of the western United States, in more than one state, as well as picking up on the dark matter, if you will, over in Europe. But again, I didn't know the plan, but there was a plan involved, and that was the plan that I was sensing as problematic and troublesome, and I called it shadow engineering, even before I knew that it was a term. I think that term is used in sacred contracts, but it was something that I could just sense around me. So obviously adjustments are required, and the third quarter moon, I'll look that up in the tables of the moon oracle as well, and I'll see what this third quarter moon could mean in terms of timing of how these adjustments are going to start taking effect. Because those who are standing before us as our quote-unquote leaders are going to lead us all into hell if others don't take the leadership positions that they need to. So here it says, adjustments are required. Third quarter moon. Think of yourself as a vessel that has been filled more and more over the past few weeks. Some of what has come your way may have been wonderful, but there's also a lot of negativity that needs to be let go of. Whatever situation you're asking about now, be honest about whether there are toxic emotions involved that you need to release into the ethers. And that's what we're releasing, is the negativity. So a lot of this, as light workers, we're transforming this energy on the planet. Okay? So we're teaching people how to be better world citizens and not align with this fury and anger. Because like I said at the beginning, I could have become like this and done some really dark things to those who came at me like this. But that's not how I roll. Okay? So you have to use your mind, and it has to be balanced mind, not a maniacal mind. And you also have to think with your heart, which is what I'm teaching. And obviously I care about what happens on our planet and to our planet and our animals. So whatever situation you're asking about now, be honest about whether this is toxic and whether you need to be involved or not, and release the negativity into the ether. This card also comes with the promise that all is not lost! Exclamation point. However, there are changes or adjustments required before you too will get to where you want to be. A change of course is forecast now that recent events have been understood and acted upon. And that's why I've been guided to share a bit about my background over the past 9 years. There may also be a crisis now that will remind you what you want and what is time to let go of. So do pay attention. Attune to the moon by saying, I am re-evaluating this situation. Additional meanings for this card are as follows. Your life may be out of balance, and this may be causing your issues. So it may be time to hatch a whole new plan. And that's what I'm saying that Spirit had me do. Satan had his plan for me, but God has a better plan. Okay? So what is she doing? She's balancing herself. Something new and exciting is around the corner. Trust may be required, however, to move the situation forward. The teaching. At the time of the third quarter moon, we know where we've been, but where are we going? The moon is now a half moon and slipping away from us as she catches less and less light, moving towards her full disappearance at the new moon. Okay, so the next new moon is going to be in Sagittarius, right? Well, technically, right now as I speak, it's the new moon in Scorpio. So from the new moon, so we're ending the from the new moon in Libra to the new moon in Scorpio, and then after that is Sagittarius. And so I suggest that you also listen to my more recent reading that talks about Sagittarius, Capricorn, and then changes coming about from January into March of next year. And that reading is called Ishtar and Commitment. So I've already correlated that reading to the first card in this series that I've already posted, which has a black woman and a white woman embracing with the earth to their left. So this is a young girl trying to balance herself, and we know many children are trying to seek balance on the planet right now, right? Because they're being targeted. So it's not just the adults that are suffering, and we have to remember that we are the adults and we are to be their protectors as well as the protectors and stewards of the earth. So again, the moon at half moon is slipping away from us as she catches less and less light and moves toward her full disappearance at the new moon, which is Scorpio, coming next. And we're right at that point. It's a time of falling away and a time to reevaluate and reevaluate what we think is going on versus what is really going on, and seeing this illusion for what it is on our planet in 3D. That those who are our so-called leaders are not really leading us to safety and national security or global security. So no matter when you draw this card, the teaching is to release and to trust. And the releasing and trusting was coming out in the first reading, or the first card as well. Recovery, resilience, trust, and letting go. So I strongly urge you to watch as many of the videos for the first card that you can for its elemental reading number 1, because these two are complementing each other, these two cards. Let me see if I can find that other card real quick. Also know on the bottom of the deck behind the ocean card is magic, and that's where God steps in. The universe steps in to remind us, just as I'm reminding you with my Earth is Magical readings, that there's magic here. Magic, despite the fear, despite the doom and gloom, there is magic on this planet, and I've experienced it, and that's through alchemy, right? So others are using chemistry and chemicals to cause mayhem. But we, as light workers and spirits of a higher order, a higher form, are the magical ones. And the anger directed at us is because those who feel this fury, they have not evolved, so they want to destroy everything that they can before the meek inherits the earth. But it's the meek who are the magical ones, okay? And that's the number 43, which is 7, and that's part of the spiritual journey of understanding that life is magical on our planet, and our planet is magical. I mean, look at it in relation to so many other planets around. Can you see why Earth is so vibrant looking and others look dead? There's a reason for that, and it's connected to these types of emotions, okay? So we don't want our planet to burn and disintegrate or explode or get sucked up in a black hole of negativity. That's why this magic is so important. Oh, and here we go. When I was reading the fire, about the fury and the fire, talking about how much of the biome, 12 million hectares destroyed in Australia alone. So look at this biome card. That's right behind the magic card. And, if you grow a garden, if you've never grown a garden, I encourage you to grow one or grow a few plants inside from seed. And that alone will show you, okay, the magic that is nature. This is a 44 card. It comes right after the 43 card magic, which adds up to a 7. And this adds up to an 8. And it's the card that comes right behind it. So, I've shuffled this deck, and these two came out next to each other in relation to our water planet and our oceans on our planet, okay, and the need to balance. So 8 is about abundance and also infinity, and the biome is about connection. We're all connected, okay? Right behind the biome card, I do want to show this because it shows a horse. It looks like a unicorn, and ice, which is another form of water. Number 33. Purity. Fire and ice. Okay, so again, adjustments are required, and they are going to happen tower moment by tower moment, whether we like it on this planet or not, because God is in control. Universal laws are usurping these types of laws that are making this type of uncontrolled behavior quote unquote legal. And I speak from experience directly and indirectly involving that statement. So I'm not just saying it to say it. I'm saying it because that's the type of evil that I was fighting in courtrooms, all told. Okay, so with that, I will be back to talk about healing fear and the issue of balance, okay? And I'll be talking about it in relation to the specific oracle cards that came up beyond the elemental oracle and moonology oracles. And that involves archangel help, the gateway oracle, And then I'll get into tarot, okay, because the vulture's showing up here. But there's a purpose for the vulture that we'll learn or remind ourselves about, okay? And I'll get into the secret tarot deck here that will help us with the shifting this negative energy and fear, the fear that's being perpetrated and projected onto us in myriad ways, notwithstanding by those setting fires and calling it legal to do these things, or, you know, in the interest of national security, when that's anything but the truth, okay? And this is where the balance on our planet is going to start happening. Number 14 in traditional tarot is about tempering this fury, and that's what this 14 card. It's been on my desk for a while, and it's what I've been doing by merging different points of view on Twitter, but also bringing it together through the spiritual community, because nothing is going to get solved without a reasonable state of mind, or reasonableness, as I learned in law school. But there isn't reasonableness happening, and it's not happening in the water industry, nor with water rights and water quality. And the quote by Mark Twain is coming back to mind again, as it did back in 2006 when I was involved in many water right cases in the very areas where Bohemian Grove is located, near the Russian River in Northern California. But the quote by Mark Twain is this: waters for fighting and whiskeys, or wait, waters for fighting over and whiskeys for drinking, or I think it's backwards. Whiskeys for drinking and waters for fighting over. Okay, and unfortunately, the control of water is in the hands right now of many bad actors who think that they're superior and should be controlling a natural resource so precious and so important as water on our planet. So, the language of flowers, I will also bring, I think I said earlier, I'll bring, however many encouraging statements here from the language of flowers. And if you've ever looked at a flower and just, you don't even have to meditate, you can look at a flower and get mesmerized by the beauty of it, and just the structure and the composition of how flowers come out of their little buds, just like caterpillars, turn into beautiful butterflies, and the vivid colors. And we live in a sexual world, and nature would not exist without sex. So it's the flowers have their sexual reproductive parts. Trees have their reproductive parts, including the pine cone, which I decided to pull into this reading too. Okay, so there's male and female pine cones, but it's almost as if those who have decided to follow Satan are after any type of beautiful expression from sex that has been created, and essentially those are God's creations, right? So Satan doesn't seem to be happy with the beauty that Earth is, and wants to destroy our home planet, and so we can't let that happen. The charm that came out, I'll show this real quick, is the wheel. And this looks like a ship's wheel. So which ship do you want to be on? Like I cited in my Patreon teachings, which relation dash ship do you want to be involved in? Do you want to be involved with those who are aligning to torch and burn and destroy and be destructive and make up lies to cover up their lies that cover up other lies about this intent to destroy, like on 9/11, while many families are still suffering? I mean, that's why I got back with my former spouse, because of the 9/11 snafu, which is the militaristic term I was talking about earlier. Situation normal, all fucked up. Well, that's what's happening to our planet, you know? Situation normal is getting all fucked up. And it's by those behaving this way, because people need to understand the more that we pay for these stupid wars that should never be because they're being made up, they're being engineered, the more we pay for that type of behavior, the more this fury builds inside, because it's feeding the demons, essentially. And I've talked to veterans before who've told me straight up, it doesn't take long in a battlefield situation to become possessed by a demon or demons. And then I already saw that face to face in those that I was around in with the military. And many of them aren't going to show you. They're good at shape-shifting behind their suits and their stripes. But anyway, so this is a wheel of a ship. Do you want to be on on a good relationship, or do you want to be on the Titanic? Okay? So that's what I'm talking about here. And also, the wheel can be like the Journey song, Wheel in the Sky. Keeps on turning, right? I don't know where I'll be tomorrow, but that's part of this journey toward balance, is letting go of the fear and finding the balance as you take your fool's journey into the new world or the new earth with your one foot in front of the other. That's all any of us could ever do, right? And that's all that I've ever done. And I've done pretty well. But there are a lot of jealous, competitive people out there who don't want powerful change. They want what they want, and they want the old world of war, war, war to just go on, because they figured out how to game the system and essentially torch the earth in the process, while thinking they're of high intelligence, or they're more intelligent than even the scientists who are finding cures for what ails us, and even killing those scientists. So again, I challenge you to look into this issue more deeply. Green aventurine is the crystal that came out when I searched for charms and crystals in my little dish. Green aventurine has to do with, heart chakra energy as well as finances. So we need to find financial stability in a more heart-minded way, rather than profit by peril, made-up wars and made-up catastrophes through FEMA and executive orders, presidential executive orders. If you get the book Behold a Pale Horse and start reading that, you'll see what I'm talking about as well. We have rose petals here as well as the pine cone. And if you look at the pine cone, these are the pine cone leaves, and these are like the rose leaves. So, you can, diversity, you can still have similarities, but different, and similar functions, but different appearances. And that's what card 1 gets at. you don't need to be setting trends of domination and using different skin colors to gain a following or gain some kind of trend or position or maneuvering that you seek, because past administrations where many of the US presidents were white, most of them were white, and now we're using racial division in different ways, but ensuring that we have certain people in high positions that are certain skin colors at certain times. It's all being engineered, is what I'm saying. So we have to get past that and appreciate diversity and biodiversity in nature as well, okay? So Abraham Lincoln had his work cut out for him, and he wasn't a perfect president, but, you know, we can learn things from what history has shown us, and some people are choosing to repeat the same things over and over again for certain effects. Disaster capitalism is the effect or the trend happening repeatedly since 9/11, but even before then, with a problem, reaction, solution, Hegelian dialectic model. So new beginnings need to happen, and that's the bottom of the deck of the Angels of Atlantis card. And new beginnings require us to have great faith. Okay? So I'll be back to read from the Angels of Atlantis Oracle, as well as the Gateway Oracle, that's going to help guide us in a more sound, sane direction. And then I'll also start doing, I'll work on my additional tiers on Patreon and start actually doing more mapping, heart mapping readings. So be on the lookout for those, and in those particular reading series, I'll be using the Enchanted Map Oracle by Colette Baron Reed. So thanks for listening, and I hope you join me for the Oracle and Tarot, the additional Oracle reading and Tarot reading as extended readings. And then I'll be getting into the third card for this series, It's Elemental, and reminding you that this is the first reading. There are 3 separate cards, card 1 and 2, which is here. Card number 2, or card 2, Bushfires Fury, is what I'm focusing on now. The number 10 is significant because, along with the wheel in tarot, the Wheel of Fortune card is factoring in here as well, and I wouldn't doubt if it pops out. But we're ending this cycle of abuse and all the other cycles that dovetail into it, including the abuse of the hydrologic cycle. Namaste.